She wasn't breaking any rules. She wasn't causing trouble. All she was doing was sitting inside her own home when the pounding on the door began. In minutes, her quiet evening turned into a nightmare. Uniformed men, cold stares, accusations she didn't deserve. But the moment that changed everything wasn't when they threatened her, or when the neighbors whispered. It was when another door opened, and the man who stepped out didn't just silence the accusations. He shattered them. This isn't just a story about one family. It's about power and justice, and the moment prejudice ran into a truth it couldn't deny. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. Families were mowing lawns, kids riding bikes, and sprinklers flickered across green yards. To most, it looked like a picture-perfect scene of comfort and security. Inside one of those homes, Monica, an educated, hard-working black woman in her mid-30s, was tidying up after her children. She had lived here for nearly 5 years, working hard to create a stable home. Her life wasn't extravagant, but it was full of love, laughter, and the kind of peace she thought she'd found in this neighborhood. Yet, beneath the quiet, there had always been tension. Subtle glances from certain neighbors, the feeling that she was being watched more closely than others, notes left on her door about minor violations from the HOA that other families seemed to get away with. But Monica brushed it off. She believed in resilience, in keeping her head high, in setting an example for her children. What she didn't know was that this ordinary weekend would soon spiral into a confrontation she could never forget. And the decision of her HOA to call in reinforcements would expose something far deeper than a dispute over property lines. The knock at first was sharp but not alarming. Monica assumed it was a delivery, but when she opened the door, it wasn't a package waiting for her. It was 2 uniformed officers, standing stiff with a clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, we've received a complaint," one said flatly. Her heart skipped. A complaint? About what? They didn't answer directly. Instead, they glanced past her shoulder into the home, their eyes scanning as if searching for something wrong. The pit in her stomach grew heavier. The officers explained that the HOA had called them about suspicious activity at her address. Suspicious, her home, her children's laughter, her existence in a neighborhood where she had paid every bill and followed every rule. Neighbors began stepping outside, drawn by the sight of officers on her porch. Monica's cheeks burned as whispers spread. Some crossed their arms, some pulled out phones, recording as if they were waiting for her to slip up. She tried to remain calm, but their words grew more pointed. They demanded identification, proof of residence, questioning her as though she were a trespasser in her own house. Each question felt less like a protocol and more like an accusation. "You don't belong here." Her children peeked from behind the curtain, their wide eyes locked on the uniforms outside. Monica felt the sting of humiliation. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting her kids from a memory that could scar them forever. Every attempt to explain seemed to fall on deaf ears. The officer's tone hardened, shifting from inquiry to intimidation. One rested his hand near his belt, a gesture subtle but powerful enough to send a jolt of fear through her. Monica stood straighter, her voice trembling but firm. "This is my home. You don't have the right." But before she could finish, a sound came from behind her. The door creaked. Heavy footsteps echoed in the entryway. Her husband, David, had returned from his late shift. The air changed the moment David stepped forward. He wasn't just any man coming to the door. He was in full uniform, neatly pressed, his badge glinting in the afternoon sun, his presence unmistakable. A decorated officer, a man who had spent years serving the same state these men claimed to represent. The silence was immediate. The shift was visible. The same officers who had spoken with sharpness and authority just seconds before froze in place. Their eyes darted to his chest, to the symbols of rank and honor that told them exactly who he was. David's expression was calm, but his posture carried weight. He crossed his arms, standing beside his wife, towering over the situation with a steadiness that needed no words. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was low, measured, controlled. The officers stammered, their previous boldness slipping into hesitation. What had been accusations now sounded like excuses. They tried to reframe their presence as a routine check, their tone softer, their eyes avoiding his. But the damage had already been done. Monica stood beside him, her humiliation still raw, the memory of their children's frightened faces burning in her chest. Neighbors who had been whispering now looked away, some retreating indoors, unwilling to confront the truth they had just witnessed. For a moment, the power dynamics that had felt so crushingly heavy flipped entirely. The men who had come to intimidate now stood cornered by their own prejudice, exposed in the most undeniable way. And yet, the silence that followed was not victory. It was a reminder that her safety had only been respected because of the uniform her husband wore. The officers left that day, retreating with half-hearted apologies and hollow justifications. Monica and David closed the door, their children running into their arms. Relief washed over them, but it was laced with something else. Because while the confrontation had ended without arrest, without violence, it had left a deeper scar. The truth was unavoidable. If David hadn't walked in at that exact moment, if he hadn't been wearing that uniform, the outcome might have been tragically different. For Monica, the humiliation lingered. She replayed the scene in her mind, the knock, the questions, the cold suspicion that she didn't belong in the very home she had built. And she thought of all the families who wouldn't have that uniform at their side. Families whose stories end not with silence, but with headlines. This wasn't just about an HOA dispute. It was about a system where blackness itself was treated as suspicion, where presence was mistaken for threat, and where dignity could be stripped away with a single phone call. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, Monica whispered a promise that their lives would be defined not by fear, but by strength, that they would know the truth and fight for a world where that truth mattered. Because the question that lingered was one no family should ever have to ask. How many more doors will be knocked on before the world finally listens? If this story made you stop and think, don't let it disappear. Share it, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe, because the more these stories are told, the harder they are to ignore. Together, we can shine a light where others want darkness.